go. Hi, everybody. It is the afternoon. I took the day off work because I needed to catch up on sleep. The daylight savings really murdered me in some ways. It was pretty bad. And I was not anticipating doing this. Part of my day I was hoping would be dedicated to some reading and writing and thinking about this upcoming attempt. I won't make any promises that it ever comes out, but making an attempt at a video essay talking about medieval fantasy storytelling, the use of anachronisms in a lot of contemporary fantasy work and writing, D&D culture, and ultimately kind of talking and raving about George R.R. Martin's A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which was just recently adapted into a first season of television that was kind of a big deal, and people on the internet right now in a lot of different spaces are really raving about it. And so I kind of wanted to do some thought processing and discuss what I'm thinking about for this. And I also kind of want to get some of the stuff out ahead of time, thinking wise, and get any kind of observations that might have some holes in it out in kind of in public light and criticism before they end up in some sort of video essay. I did the D&D culture and grew up with that in high school, actually earlier than that, probably middle school into high school. And I was, quite inundated because Hollywood and other culture, key parts of culture really accentuated and blew it up for people. I think of Stranger Things and its return to 80s nostalgia tinted glasses, and Dungeons and Dragons being the hobby of so many of the kids in that. That's kind of not the B plot per se, but I know there's a focus of that story. And I know that D&D had gotten and found kind of a new light in some respect from that, right? It comes out of the 80s basement dwelling satanic panic into this whole new cultural light. Think of Critical Role, which was and is a cast of incredibly talented voice actors in the video game industry specifically, who all came together to play Dungeons and Dragons on these kind of live stream kind of things. And that took the internet culture and TTRPG, tabletop RPG kind of culture into a whole new light. That really opened the gates for accessibility and access to what was a very niche and weird thing, which is still very niche and weird, to a greater audience. Fifth edition of Dungeons and Dragons was published around this time. As an example, I have my player's handbook here. And this was an easier to access, easier to learn kind of module and system from the time, coming from 3.5 and 4th edition, which were very technical and not necessarily the most accessible for new players. Because I've played 3.5, for example, and a little bit of looked at 4th edition manuals, and I remember those not being the easiest things to grasp. So the 2010s were defined by this. It was a big deal. And excuse me, a lot of the culture, and this is kind of my question I have at the moment, thinking about it out loud, is what shaped what? Did the culture shape our perception and the way we tell stories in these medieval or just other kind of fantasy settings? Or did the way we tell these fantasy settings or the stories in these fantasy settings help shape the culture? And I suppose it's kind of both. And if you were around and you kind of remember the culture from the time doing the D&D thing, it had that very chaotic, I almost want to call it late millennial kind of, or like millennial like late Gen X, very chaotic LOL so random thing going on to it. I remember being subject to many, 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 many vines, which is like the proto TikTok, of people's D&D play experiences, and everybody wants to play a bard, and everybody wants to roll the natural 20 to seduce a dragon. And I just remember being absolutely sick of that culture almost immediately while I was attempting to try and engage and do some storytelling and play in kind of these worlds that I was creating. And that felt like that kind of defined much of the way stories and stuff and the public perception of Dungeons and Dragons were communicated. Everything felt very like progressive, cosmopolitan, contemporary, and that is through the use of anachronisms. And I guess I should probably make that, and trying to find that, make that a little bit more specific in a moment. But all of this kind of made it very like almost unappealing to me in some way. My stint as a player for Dungeons and Dragons didn't last very long at all, partly because there was a rejection of the archetype. There was a rejection of what we might consider the more traditional myths and nature of storytelling in favor of something that was essentially copy pasting our often postmodern or kind of nihilistic new age tendencies onto the medieval fantasy or other kind of fantasy genre and blend. And that's just really off putting. And that's how what I feel and perceive and like observation and some of the stuff I've read recently has kind of been the case for fantasy storytelling is we're going to use this aesthetic, we're going to use this flavor to just kind of tell these other stories that we can all be murder hobos and, you know, do the Guardians of the Galaxy ragtag group of dysfunctional, crazy people. And I think that might just be reflective of where the culture's been at too. So again, it's that is this the both and kind of situation. I'm thinking about a couple different texts to highlight in this video essay, whatever you want to call it. Not really sure. I want to look at Critical Role kind of from a distance. Again, part of the trouble of doing this work right now is that I did not completely immerse myself in these things. I'm not somebody who had viewed hundreds upon hundreds of episodes of these campaigns. I was doing my own thing. I was reading and writing my own thing at the time. And so I remember the flavor and the vibe of such things, but I'm not quite sure how to handle or go back to return to those things to maybe better accurately represent the vibe and accurately represent what was being presented in these things. I don't want to have some sort of, you know, fallacies in my logic in my presentation that is disingenuous to the work that was being presented at the time. I was just looking at some trailer footage from the animated adaptation of Critical Role's campaigns. What was it called? The Legend of Vox Machina, and then they did the Mighty Nine. These were two of their big campaigns. And it's about what I remember the vibe being: very chaotic, lots of profanity, lots of violence, lots of everything that we were kind of obsessed with in our storytelling in the 2010s. And Game of Thrones is also partly roped into this as well, right? You've got your HBO indulgences as they already do. So you've got your medieval fantasy flavor and blend and political drama and dragons, but you also have your hyper violence and softcore porn on screen. And you're like, all right, great. This is what the adults and this is what people want. And that felt like that was kind of across the board in all of these things. And I feel like through my observations and like so much of those sensibilities are finally like take kind of an ultimate encapsulation or embodiment in Baldur's Gate 3. Like I play that game and it's fun. And if you were here the other night and watched the failure that was attempting to live stream a playthrough with President Foxman and company here on the stream or found it elsewhere, uh, I enjoy that game quite a bit. It's fun. But I have so many issues kind of with the world building, with its sensibilities, because it is 5th edition D&D. It is 5th edition D&D's player's handbook and DM guide and world all crammed into one space, and I don't think it always works. Conversely, in my viewing of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms recently, which I was really quite captivated by, I found that at least at the core essence of the story, uh, perhaps some of the trappings and smaller details are still emblematic of some of these problems I have with the storytelling of today. I found that this was almost an antidote to some of that cynicism, some of that chaos, some of that edge that defined much of the medieval fantasy and other storytelling that I was surrounded by, somewhat engaged with in the 2010s. What you have in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is actually quite archetypal. What you have in that is quite aspirational, um, and is, through at least the main character's lens, an attempt to preserve what is, at least in that world, regarded as nobility, virtue, honor, etc. It's all grounded in a very humble kind of way. Um, and perhaps that's the other thing I might say. There's nothing humble. There's nothing humble about any of the archetype sensibilities or storytelling of much of the fantasy storytelling that comes out of and is surrounding kind of the cultural resurgence of Dungeons and Dragons. I'm going to pause for a minute. I know we have a couple of people viewing. If you have any questions to help kind of steer this conversation, throw them at me. If you want to hop into the stream to talk this out, you're more than welcome to. Um, to just kind of help get the ball rolling with this conversation. I don't know how long I'll be on today per se, but like I said, jump in. There's some stuff around. I'd like to try and stay on topic today. So if you have any questions related to this or maybe broader storytelling, go for it. Um, Otherwise, if you just want to enjoy my ramblings while you're doing work in the midday or the early morning, if you're on some other coast, that's really cool too. Um, Let me see if I can't maybe find an example without getting, I don't know, is the word copyright striked or something. Just kind of pull up some examples of the vibe and the chaos that I feel like defined much of Dungeons and Dragons at the time. Because I lived it too. The people I played this game with, save for a couple people, were the stereotypical murder hobo, homebrew, custom character obsessed types. And that frustrated the heck out of me trying to play. And I just wanted everybody to like be archetypal and be nice and be good, and nobody wanted to do that. There was a couple encounters in which it would be, let me just murder this person. Let me just, seduce like basically let me do all the chaos that the D&D vine said. Let me seduce the dragon. Let me do this really silly thing. Let me be this awesome lone wolf character because I just want kind of a wish fulfillment coming out of this game thing. And that sucked. That sucked. I've not played D&D in years, partly because of my poor experiences growing up and try to play it. I have all my old books and my illustrations and my world still in my closet from when I was in high school. My mother was kind enough to force my journals and old books upon me again as I moved out, and looked back at them, and a lot of it's garbage. But there's a lot of gems, and it very much encapsulates a lot of my storytelling sensibilities from when I was growing up at the time. And then I remember writing stories within that world that I'd built, even into community college. I tried to get a short story, kind of with the fantasy trappings, published in my community college student magazine. And I got told it was great, but it was way too long for what was supposed to be published there. Don't play D&D with narcissistic sociopaths. The problem was, I think that everybody that I knew at the time was like middle schoolers are that, early high school kind of are that. Um, I was built different. I just want to say for the record, but yeah, that was a lot of the people that I played with were hyper specific interest, kind of obsessed with themselves, very much of the culture, the budding kind of progressive culture at the time. It was really made playing with them difficult, and I really hated it. So yeah, again, like I said, I haven't played since. I think the last time I tried was just a couple years ago with some people from my job, and I just was like, whatever, not impressed. The thing that I really liked, built for tough. It's true. Um, the thing that I did get out of it, and I kind of alluded to already, was my favorite thing was just the storytelling, making my own worlds, making my own characters. All of them were very much coming out of the humble beginnings archetype, some sort of folk hero or rags to riches kind of thing. And so again, that's why A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms really uh, spoke to me, I guess, in some way watching this, because it felt like a response to all of the baloney that I felt like I had to deal with at the table as a DM and as a player for years. Dunk in that show, despite the attitude of the nobility, despite the cruelty of the nobility and the rejection of him wholeheartedly at several instances, has a perseverance in this world and an optimism and an idealism that I've not seen in a character in quite a while in these settings. And that was the most refreshing thing to see. And it was equally refreshing rereading it in the novella or experiencing it in the novella. Um, and then also looking at now the graphic novel adaptations as evidenced here on my fake shelf, because I don't have a shelf right there. So like I said, let me pull up potentially an example to highlight some of my concerns, especially for those unfamiliar with maybe what the vibe was for all of this is. Let's see. Is this going to become some sort of slander for what people really liked in the popular culture at the time? Yes. Is that because I'm a contrarian? You betcha. Am I going to get in trouble for playing all of this video? It's an advertisement. I'm basically promoting it. we'll see what happens. Add share screen. I'll just play a very brief snippet of this. And we will add to stage. There we go. So this is the trailer for The Legend of Vox Machina. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you wish to hop in, you are welcome to, sir. It's good to see you, Luke. As we can see there. Anyway, this is the trailer for The Legend of Vox Machina, and I don't know, I'll play just a little bit of it, like I said, to maybe describe in some small way the attitude of so much of this work. Here we go. I'm about to get copyright striked, I'm sure.
Evil rises. Our only hope lies in these brave warriors.
Too loud.
What the
Oh boy, hyperviolence. Oh boy, we already have profanity. Oh my goodness, LOL, so random. Like, we're already there. We're already starting.
Right. Who else have we got?
I'm sorry, who the hell are you?
Ha 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 ha. Very funny, very funny. This was the storytelling sensibilities. This is peak, like, this is almost Guardians of the Galaxy in some respects. This is, God, so many different stories. And this was just everywhere. This was much of what we liked in our popular storytelling. Play a little bit more.
Machina, we shit up.
Let's go! Come on, work! Stella's here!
You can't be seriously considering them for such a task.
Our reputation is less than stellar. If killing for gold isn't getting us anywhere, maybe we try doing some good this time?
Boring.
Bunch of morally ambiguous people becoming heroes, which I'm not opposed to that archetype or that type of storytelling by any means, but
If this evil persists, the kingdom will starve to death.
ha 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 ha.
I suggest we run right now.
That we fight.
All right, that's enough. It's chaotic. It's chaotic. There's so much chaos in this, and in so much that I was inundated with trying to engage with these kind of trappings and like genre flavor. I don't want to call it a genre. I think we're living in late stage shock focused entertainment. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good way to describe it. Ernest was to live again. That's the thing that I was so impressed with A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. And that's not to say that these shock value trappings aren't present in this adaptation of George R.R. Martin's novel. Much of the anachronistic kind of humor, shock humor that we have today is found in that story, in that adaptation. Most notoriously, the first episode opens with playing the Game of Thrones theme, and our main character, essentially there's a cutaway gag. We think he's going to take up the sword and go on his quest, and he's taking a dump behind a tree, and we see that, and it's like, ha 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 ha, isn't that funny? And it's not. It's gross and it's weird. Again, there's that, yeah, late stage shock focused, and all of that at the time was late stage shock. And that was a problem that was persistent in comic book culture as well. I don't know if any of you guys remember the Deadpool becoming a big icon, big deal in the popular culture, or maybe in like pockets of the culture at that time as well. And he became, in a lot of respects, the embodiment of some of that shock culture also. And was never impressed with that either. Again, all of these crazy people that I used to hang out with in middle school, high school, all enjoyed Deadpool and all of this stuff. And it was, again, just too much for me. Conversely, right, I think of things that still in many respects define and have shaped the fantasy genre, the medieval fantasy genre specifically. I think of Lord of the Rings, and the Lord of the Rings, I think, is so far removed still from that late shock entertainment or anything like that, and yet that still persists. right? Cottagecore in some respects comes out of the complete opposite of that chaotic vibe. Everybody just wants the Hobbit life or the Moomin life. And there's an earnestness and a sincerity there. And so I suppose that would be one of the things I'm trying to hit on. And again, I'm not quite sure how to articulate it. But Neil, I think you really hit on that with this idea of it being shocking. For almost shock's sake, we're entertained by such things. We're also obsessed with such foul. I sound like a prude. Maybe I am a Puritan. I'm just kidding. The excessive use of profanity. Everybody in these stories, every character is crass. Every character has some sort of crazy, explicit, chaotic vice for the funsies. And that makes nobody likable either, I've found in some of these stories. Sometimes it works and sometimes it really doesn't. And I think that's off-putting. And I think the use of language in this kind of anachronistic way is not helpful sometimes. It helps to communicate certain ideas, but I think that those ideas could maybe more clearly be communicated or communicated more subtly without the use of that. So I think again of this show, and it's not, as I said, without some of the trappings of the last 15 years of writing and culture. The cruelty of the nobility is often expressed through such foul expressions in language presented and ascribed to Dunk, our main character, and a general meanness in a very obvious, very cosmopolitan, contemporary kind of way. And you're like, I get it. This is how we communicate it. They're mean. They're a jerk. Like I get it. But it's not necessary. Is this open stream? It is. I can repost the link. It should be at the top of the comments. I will open it up again or post it here. I'd like to try and stay on topic for sure. So yeah, you're more than welcome to hop in, introduce yourself, and if you have any thoughts to help kind of illuminate on this discourse about storytelling and fantasy and stuff, of course, you're welcome. Hope to see you here in just a moment. I'm rambling. I meant to talk about Baldur's Gate. I'll wait for a minute. Again, anachronisms were very much stuck and mired in the contemporary progressive sensibilities of today. And that's just kind of exhausting after a certain point. Some of, I think, the fantastical. All right, let me add
Hey
distinction.
there,
Hi.
hello.
Hello,
Hi, is my
hello.
audio okay?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Welcome.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, you can just call me Bear because it's easier than the name I've got. But yeah, no, I just come across your stream talking about like D&D and fantasy, so right spot for me.
Of course. Awesome. Well, how do you want to kind of steer the conversation? What have you thought so far of the discourse? Is there any objections, things you wish to add to it?
Well, to be honest with you, I've only just like jumped in, so I missed the
Sure.
intro stuff. But
let me give you some background then. So I'm working on discussing at some point in writing in some formal way, George R. R. Martin's A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. It just recently, hit TV. It's been received raving reviews from people all over the place. But the thing that has impressed me the most is a return, as we've seen in the chat, to a sincerity and earnestness, and kind of archetypal storytelling, at least at its core. Despite the last 15 years or so of very anachronistic, contemporary, I don't want to quite say progressive aspects and elements of storytelling that have dominated and shaped much of the storytelling and attitude of medieval fantasy. And a lot of that comes from, I think, Dungeons and Dragons of 5th edition onwards, like Critical Role and all that they were doing did a lot and Game of Thrones to an extent too did a lot to reshape the way we approach the fantasy genre.
oh yeah, definitely. D&D being a big like inspiration for a lot of things, absolutely. But with George R. R. Martin's new thing, I do like what he's doing so far. It just has to stick that way, because if it goes off the rails too much, you lose what the original idea was.
I agree. I've just recently. So have you read all the novellas, and are you super up to date with this work?
I'd say I'm up to date with it, but I do need to I finish off me reading with it. But I'm up to date, yeah.
Okay. I've only read the first novella, so I've just read The Hedge Knight, and I've started the graphic novel adaptation. So I'm working off of very limited info. And I was discussing earlier with my roommate kind of the adaptation differences. And as much as I enjoyed the adaptation, I'm still quite thoroughly impressed just with Martin's original approach to this. Um, and I think some of the narrative ambiguities invite a continued kind of hope for the future of Westeros and idealism, and change that kind of comes about. And I think about the end of specifically maybe as the example, the end of that story, spoilers, I suppose, Lord Valar, I don't remember the prince's name, approaches Dunk about his son, right? He says that, Aegon will go with nobody else. He will only squire for you. Come live in like under my rule as my knight, and you can squire him, and I'll train you. And he rejects it flat out, right? He says that, the nobility and the courts and the castles have done, your other sons no good. If I'm going to squire him, I'll take him out with me, and that kind of in the land, live a very humble, down to earth, rooted life. And he leaves, right? He takes that into consideration, and then a page later, Egg shows up, and you go, okay, is there change on the side of Aegon's father to allow him to do this? And there's a nice ambiguity to that, to which is completely lost, I think, for the sake of TV drama in that show, right? You see later as they're leaving the Ashford Meadow, he's searching for Aegon, which assumes that he's lied and simply run off again, and that no change on the part of the nobility has come about. And I think that not quite directly is the entire encapsulation of that, a change in that, but I think that what Martin is trying to do in some of that story is, through a character like Dunk, bring real hope, change to a very, very cynical, very difficult kind of world within the politics and stuff. Like it's all very grounded, and I guess I suppose I'm rambling, but stop me if you wish.
Oh, no, your stream. You go ahead.
I let everybody take over the stream. That's what I do here. Throw Neil in just a moment. The humility and the groundedness, I suppose, is what needs to stay. To your point, if they don't stick the landing, if the next season loses sight that what Dunk is doing as a humble hedge knight is good, is beneficial in some way, or if through other characters, the directors, etc., essentially make him the fool, I think that would be the big issue, because this is a return to an earnestness in storytelling.
And for me as well, the big thing I'd say, what sets apart R.R. Martin's stuff is how he does all the intersecting drama between everything. It reminds you a lot of, like, the old noble houses during medieval times, where brothers killing their own fathers over the simplest of things.
Yes.
He was able to encapsulate that and present it really well, and having that in a bickering. It's not all action scenes. It's got the actual, if they do well on that as well, that'll, be the staple for it. You can have great fantasy without constant action.
Yeah, it's true. That show does a really good job of letting things breathe as well, in the political drama, in the family drama, from an outside lens, right? Dunk stumbles upon these conflicts. He's part of a greater world. And rather than being so mired just in the killings and the violence, there's so much underlying tension that exists there that I'm really impressed with. Let me add Neil to the stage. Bear, you're welcome to stick around and continue to talk. But let's see.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Who else would like to hop in and discuss? Hi, Neil. Welcome to the Impromptu stream.
Hello. How's my audio?
Your audio is just fine.
I'm doing good. Okay. Now you guys are up to date with pop culture a lot more than I am, the latest. So I'm enjoying your riffing on J.R. Martin stuff, or not J.R.R. Martin, George Martin.
We're blending creators now.
Yeah.
I liked Lord of the Thrones. That was my favorite series growing up.
Nice.
I wasn't quite a fan of Game of Rings, though. I found that one to be quite silly.
Game of Rings.
Anyway. So Neil, you brought up a really good way, I think, to describe this. This earnestness will live again. We're living in late stage shock-focused entertainment. We, in our entertainment, are so obsessed, I think, with this kind of carve your own path, positive nihilism, as I think I would describe it. in this writing, and not that something like A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is directly addressing it by any means, nor do I think I want to see that addressed per se, but the attitude of this work is, I hopefully will help maybe steer back away from such things, especially as we're here in the corner and some of what we do. For context, Bear, we're a part of kind of this broader network of people discussing philosophy, culture,
Oh,
religious
nice,
studies,
nice.
etc. And so much of our discourse will inevitably end up back there in some way. And so as we kind of return to this attempt to search for meaning in our lives, meaning through myth, meaning through the stories we tell, meaning through religion, like I hope that this helps to highlight or return to that in some respect.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just retrieving my milk.
Oh, no worries.
Yes, I'm a man who drinks milk because I have very thin bones. Look at these wrists. My mother had osteoporosis. Anyway, yeah.
The stream
Just
is
like our
brought to you
culture,
by
the bones of our culture are very thin right
It's
now.
true. It's true.
Yeah.
And the reception to this show specifically has been so nice to see, from all sides, because from God, when I was, growing up in high school, the kind of anti-SJW comics culture is, praising the show. The bread tuber kind of more left thought philosophy is really appreciating the show for other things. And so, not that this is going to be anything that unites the culture, but just in the small microcosm, it's nice to see something like this be appreciated by so many different people. And again, I hope that this is a return to something a little bit more meaningful in the work, and the culture and shaping it.
Yeah, because we saw a dip in those type of items then, but it's coming back.
Yeah, it's coming back. I don't think we'll ever quite hit the, we're doing things like ancient myth per se, and we're returning to a very true archetypal root, but hopefully we kind of find our way back to some of that which is important of stories to move forward. Let me think. I have an example of one of the worst books I read and the worst offender I've seen recently of some of the this post meaning, we might call it, culture found in an Arthurian adaptation. Actually, I read this last summer, and I've never talked about this anywhere on stream. I ranted about this to a coworker of mine who was a medieval studies major. It started with me saying, read the book, and then by the end of it, I'm like, I hate this thing. This is stupid. This is Lev Grossman's The Bright Sword. Lev Grossman is most notably the author of the Magician's Trilogy, of which I have not read. But from what I understand, he is doing a lot of work commenting on, in some way, satirically or otherwise, things like the Chronicles of Narnia. That's kind of his premise, is that the magician's world is Narnia. They have the same trappings of this return, entering and exiting the magic world, etc. It's all about kind of the YA, being a college student struggles, etc. Very well received from what I understand. It had a couple seasons of story. On television, I think I tried to engage with it once when I was younger, and I was not for it at the time, nor do I think I am. Anyway, you put out The Bright Sword last year. Let me double check the publication year. What is it called? When was this published? Because I was there when it came out. 2024. It's been 2 years now. My bad. I think
I was there, Gandalf, when it came out.
It's true.
In
Don't
2004.
Oh, it's true. You were really there. Don't recite the text to me, which I was there when they were written. That's the other line. It's the
Don't. Nice. Yeah.
Oh no,
So
quotes Gandalf from the 78 animated film. It's like, must hurry Frodo, and then he just scares the little hobbit.
Yes, Bakshi's Lord of the Rings is great. I prefer, though, Bear, did you see Rankin Bass's adaptation of The Return of the King?
No, I do need to watch that.
Oh, that one's wonderful. It's kind of corny. And Rankin Bass did The Hobbit animated adaptation from 77 perhaps, around the same time as Bakshi's. But then obviously Bakshi covered Fellowship in the Two Towers in his one animated feature, and so they just jump into The Return of the King But notably, like half the fellowship who in cast who remain there are gone, and so it's this weird distilled, like not quite media res, but like okay, the story just kind of starts here. Here we go. Like, and there's like a little song kind of gives you background to where the characters were. It's
See,
wonderful.
I always heard that it's like the reason for that was because they wouldn't let Bakshi do his own thing, so he finished it off and then did Wizards.
Ah, okay. When did Fire and Ice come out? That was his thing too, right? That sword and
Oh
sorcery.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that was very much Frazetta was a part of that, I'm sure, right? That was his doing
Yeah.
as well. Yeah. Man, I'm gonna have to put these things on my list to watch in their entirety. I've always known about these culturally, like through online like discourse and stuff. But so Wizards, you're saying is him saying, "Well, you won't let me finish Lord of the Rings. I'll do my own thing." You're saying?
Yeah, because he didn't want to stray too far from the original story, but he wanted to like splice his own stuff into it. But because he was told
Ah,
no, he was just said, "All right, I'm doing my own thing."
okay, that's interesting. I will have to look into Wizards then, and perhaps view at some point to make a long list. So anyway, Bright Sword. I want to talk briefly about this. I hate this book. And it tricked me for about 400 pages, and I let it trick me for 400 something pages. Um, this was set after the fall of Camelot, so this is after the death of Arthur. This is after he slays Mordred. The kingdom is in shambles. There is this what is the character's name? Column is this knight or this kid on one of the outer southern isles who finally gets his opportunity to come to Camelot and become a knight, and he only discovers then that the country has fallen, right? Because word travels a little bit slower this time. So then he pairs up with whoever is left post Grail Quest, post Fall of Camelot of the Knights of the Round Table to essentially seek out the new king of Camelot. And at the same time, there's lots of chapters that go back and retell and recontextualize the stories of the knights and where they were and their relationship to King Arthur. There's a lot of good in this story, and there was a lot of really good characterization and reimaginings of Arthur, Guinevere, and Lancelot for much of the story until it all completely blew up and fell apart. Arthur in flashbacks, and I love this, struggles with his kind of dual inheritance as both kind of born of Uther Pendragon and kind of the line of Roman rulers coming into England, and then also struggles with his kind of Fey background and kind of the old world pagan roots. And so so much of his character, he's very just regular kind of true Th White kind of King Arthur, very actually quite sensitive, thoughtful, spirit of adventure, childlike. I loved this Arthur. It was really wonderful, and much of the flashback stuff was great. The trouble with it is that Lev Grossman was attempting to incorporate and splice in very 21st century ideas about sex, identity, etc., into these, very much rooted in
Ah,
the 14th century characters. And I let it play out for a long time. I let it happen. Sir Bedivere, the one-handed knight, right, Arthur's right-hand man, was the big gay for Arthur, and he lived with that tension the whole time, and that gets brought up regularly in the story. Sir Palamedes is, a Middle Eastern immigrant in an Anglo-Saxon world and has to struggle with that and not belonging, and so we go over much of the angst of that. What is the one? Is it Sir Dinadan? I think it is Sir Dinadan, is actually a woman and trans for as much you can do that in the 14th century thanks to some
wait,
magic.
really?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes. And I let it play out. I read this whole freaking book, and none of that was the thing that bothered me. What really started to mess up for me. So the goal is that they have to find a new relic. The Grail's gone. They don't have Excalibur. They're like, well, we need to determine who the new king is, and God is the one who will give us our king, right? It happened before. Arthur was chosen by God to be the king, and so we just need to go on another quest, and so they do to find. I think the spear, the lance of that pierces Christ. That's where they go to find.
Spear of
Um,
Longinus.
yes, that's the name. Thank you. I couldn't think of it, and I didn't want to butcher it.
No, it's all
That's
right.
so that's what they're hunting for, and they re-encounter Lancelot specifically. At one time, they end up in the Fey world, and Morgan Le Fay tells this main character that the world will never be the same. Things are changing. You might be the source of that change. And then the character assassinations really start hitting. They meet Lancelot at like a monastery, and he's, obviously resigned himself to this kind of life of chastity and of the church post seeming affair with Guinevere and the fall of Camelot. But it turns out that there was never actually a romantic love affair between the two of them. This was merely the perception of the courts based on kind of the chivalric games. And yet, why is Lancelot so despondent? Why does Lancelot despair over these things if he is a man who had not quite sinned? And instead, he is tormented by the idea that he would have, that he could have. And I thought that that was almost really sweet and a very interesting take, that this man is tortured not by the acts that he's done, but even just by the desire that would break his code. And there was some really good dialogue about that in this. I used to have it written down and sorted, and I was excited. And I was like, this is great. This is a wonderful, interesting alternative view to this relationship between Guinevere and Lancelot that almost preserves their dignity in some way. And it's not quite it's a very different tragedy. But then that gets ruined because it turns out that Lancelot was just power hungry the whole time, posed as Galahad to take over Camelot, and was just evil because he wanted to be king.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a couple other things. Nimue, right? Merlin's lover, right? Who traps him in that rock for all time so that Arthur no longer has his mentor, his Virgil, with him, is a prominent character. And she reveals that Merlin was actually this creepy, pulling the strings behind everything. I don't want to call him Epstein type character. And he was going to like assault her and do all these awful things to her. And then she had to like seal him up in the rock because of that, because he was trying to kill her.
Had to seal him in carbonite.
Yes. So Merlin is now this wacky, depraved, evil wizard trapped in the rock. That comes up, and that was obnoxious. What else? What is the other big offender? Oh, the big one. So the Feyland like starts opening up. So like, Camelot has fallen, so this allows Morgan Le Fay and the Fey world to really blend again, and like the pagan world is coming back. The crew ascend basically not quite to heaven, but they end up on this bridge, and they find the Lance of Longinus, and they find the saint and the steward of it. But then they fight all the angels and they like kill them, and then they basically say, well, God is dead and we will like create our own path without such things. All of this under the surface, ultimately revealed, is a very I guess anti-religion, very nihilistic, very Nietzschean kind of like, God is dead, we form our own path, we can do what we want, and we can be the good, we can be the change. And the book ends with them. They also subvert the whole prophecy thing the whole time. It's like Colum is supposed to be the one to become the new king, and he's like, no, we'll just make Guinevere queen of Camelot again. And all of the things, the progressive politics, etc., and the sensibilities of the 21st century finally kind of come to a bubble at the very end, and it all falls very flat. And I was so very annoyed with it because there were glimpses of some really good characterization here.
Especially, see, the thing is that you could actually like give a character like he's disdain towards religion, and you can pull that off really well. But it's all about execution.
Yes. The problem is everyone comes to have that attitude after a certain point. Everyone. And there's some nuance to it. I like the idea of a King Arthur or another knight kind of wrestling with, what do we do post Grail quest? Everyone's dead, and those who were worthy are gone, right? They've taken the Grail. So like, surely there's something to be explored there. And I liked that idea, wrestling with the nature of God's sovereignty, or how he interacts with the world and how we interact with him. Like there's some really good stuff that could be done there, but it is kind of just relegated to, well, God is cruel and we are not, and we can be what we want to be. And it's like,
yeah,
oh,
because
thanks.
You could have done an interaction like in the Prince of Egypt, where he interacts and talks with God, and when he questions him, God's like, yeah, I made men blind and deaf, I can do that, but there's a reason.
Yeah. And there's none of that. It's quite cruel. It's quite unfortunate. Really mean-spirited as well, and heartbreaking reading this book. This pissed me off so much. It was like a summer read of mine, and I blew through it in like a week, 2 weeks. The prose was gripping enough, and even after it became a train wreck, I was like, I got to see this through. I have 200 pages left.
I'll have to give you the good book recommendation then.
I'll have to, I'll take them, add to my giant stack of readings going on. So This is one of the examples of contemporary storytelling that encapsulates so many of my problems with the fantasy genre today, specifically with like medieval fantasy. You're obviously downstream of the very like Catholic, very Christian kind of storytelling. Obviously, you see that with the evolution of the Arthurian legend and myth, and for the kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater, as we have done. In the last 20 so years with our storytelling with these things is frustrating, because now you're at a point with a lot of post 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons stories. You're at the point now where it's like, let's just do a modern like story, but we're just going to put the fantasy vibes over it so we can tell whatever weird like rom-com drama we want to do. Like Barnes and Noble is littered with such things today, and that's a different discourse I'm not quite qualified to speak on necessarily here either. But I don't know, fantasy stories, which is something I quite like, is in a really weird spot.
So you got to dig out like the deep stuff.
Yeah. T.H. White's Once and Future King reigns right now as my, and not that I've read a lot per se, it's kind of my definitive Arthur story in my mind. I read that probably 2 years ago, tried to reread it recently, but some other things came up, and man, White got it the first time. Like I was very, very impressed with that story. It keeps obviously the trappings and the appeal, and then the subsequent tragedy ultimately of that thing. It's really, it's just beautiful. I was so impressed with that. There's a lot of, again, I would text my friends quotes from these books as I was reading them. There's a lot of great moments in that. I've got a lot of the poems on my shelf. I want to buy Parzival and read that at some point. Malcolm Gwyte's coming out with Sir Galahad and the Grail in April. I think comes out here in the US. Very excited about that.
Oh, nice.
So that's on my short list. So yeah, I guess there needs to be a return to a more conventional, hopeful kind of story in these things, and it's just lacking in so many ways, and like getting little glimpses of it in something like A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, even in a very pale way, was very nice, very refreshing.
Right, people just like, they do want the down to earth stuff and the grittiness and the realism. It makes the world sell.
Yeah. I've never engaged with Game of Thrones as a whole, and so part of my shock, I think, with this too is engaging with A Knight of Seven Kingdoms is that I've never had an interest to particularly indulge, not like A Song of Ice and Fire or the television show. Again, it's sensibilities, and HBO's indulgence into certain explicit content is not something I necessarily want to subject myself to for 8 seasons. Also knowing how it ends as well. So to find something even here, is in something like this that's actually quite tame comparatively has been really refreshing. Like you can tell you could tell a good story. You don't have to have your softcore porn and like hyper violence on screen all the time. Like we've lost that at some point, and so to see that even begin to kind of move away from that was really nice as well. Man, I just sound like a rude Puritan. Never thought I would be, but here we are. No, and that's just how it is. I really don't want to see that. And so even the novella specifically was quite tame, and told like I would almost be able to be like, and like the illustrations in it. I'll show you the illustrations. They're really pretty. I was like, this is almost fairy tale like. Look at this. This is wonderful. Wonderful stuff. Really, really pretty. Like really almost feels like a return to form. This was written in what, 98, 99, right up into the 2000s, I think.
Yeah.
Look at this. So good. And you're just getting this as you're reading the story. Really wonderful stuff. Super impressed.
So I was going to suggest Berserk, but if you don't like the hyper-violent stuff.
I've heard friends talk about Berserk for many a time. They've had those obsessions and like fixations and like indulging with that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I want to read that. Like I know kind of what happens in it, and I don't really want to be subject to it. Some of the visuals,
yeah, that's fine.
Exist.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I quite like the wholesome. There needs to be some more wholesome stuff in the world and our stories. I understand, like Berserk I get as a masterpiece, and I will respect and appreciate that. I just like right now I'm like, nah, this ain't it.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine.
So, trying to think, what else is on my shelf as a good example? Nope, 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 not seeing anything. Yeah, so I guess the goal is just to try and find things within this realm. And I can't find it in the superhero genre per se. We've kind of completely lost the plot there in some respects. And I feel like that's the other thing I talk about here on my channel is superhero comics. Much
Oh
to
yeah.
the disdain of people who when I clump all of Western comics in with the mainstream, but I do it. So, we've lost the plot and the sincerity and with the earnestness with that at the same time as we did with like the medieval fantasy. And both are struggling to find its roots and figuring out what to be again, like now, and trying to emerge as to something I think better, or should emerge as something better. And we're still like a long work in progress there.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of tangled wire to undo.
It's a lot. And I don't know how much you know about that, but I was an outside viewer of much of the 2010s Comicsgate politics, like culture war stuff of the time, as a looker on the outside of that. And that was all a mess and not ultimately very helpful to solving it either.
I remember around that time the big one was with it was like the X-Men Teen Squad, and the one where it was like, oh, he was exposed to internet gas.
Yes, I kind of remember that. There was so much coming out of Marvel Comics and stuff at the time that was absolutely wild. Jordan Peterson was mocked very explicitly and obviously in a Captain America comic one time as a response to the culture war. And then all of these guys doing the exposing were trying to make their own works, which were not good, from what I've told. They've not held up. And so even the critics of, we want to call it the critics of the court, could not themselves create something better to challenge that which the industry was providing.
Mm.
That was all quite a mess at the time. Let me see.
Wasn't
Anything
the
else
one
you
where
want
it
to?
was a Batman comic and Joker said, "Oh, I may be an evil supervillain, but I'm not a you know what."
Oh yes, that was back in the 90s. That was during
Oh,
a
was it?
DC
Oh,
Marvel crossover. This was yeah, which is weird that had come up at the time. But yes, that was DC versus Marvel amalgam comics crossover stuff because he's confronting the Red Skull in that moment for whatever reason. I don't know the context for that panel, but yeah, that was, and that's stupid even then.
mm.
At the time, like I don't think that would work necessarily either. But that's a conversation about the philosophy of the Joker, which has happened before in conversation before with Neil specifically. He's
Oh
been
yeah, it's a good conversation to be honest.
so yeah, that's where that panel comes from.
Uh,
Yeah. Let me see if I can't find an example of something from Baldur's Gate 3, or if I can pull up some sort of images or visuals to maybe shift gears about that. Bear, are you familiar with that game or anything around it?
I haven't played it myself, but I do know about it.
Okay. All right. So Baldur's Gate 3 is like the perfect encapsulation of 5th edition D&D, and that's for better, for worse, and that's in a lot of respects a really good encapsulation of what was coming out of that culture. It is obviously combat is styled after that game. Let me see if I can't pull up some of my old images from when I was playing the game. I made a character. I played a cut game through for like 70 hours last summer. It kind of
Oh
became
wow.
a fixation. I was off of work because I'm a teacher, and I'd bought the game on sale, and I was like, you know what, this is fun. I did some co-op stuff with my friends, and then really came to enjoy the just doing it on my own. But so much of that world is very cosmopolitan in a way that I don't think works in kind of these fantastical settings. There's too much going on a cosmological sense. You have all of these higher beings that are gods or deities competing with one another. You have this kind of planetary scape for this other higher being that you regularly interact with. And
Mm.
I find myself sitting there the whole time going like, how does any of this world really work? Right? Where's the power? Where's the hierarchy of powers and principalities here? That is just, not to sound awful. I don't want to say it's almost too diverse, but again, there's too much going on. And the politics and culture, social norms are at times far too contemporary in their sensibilities. And then also just not nuanced enough or flat enough. Like Drow are, not good people. You don't want to be around drow, and there's certain conflicts between different fantasy races, but it doesn't do. I don't think it's nuanced enough. I don't think it does enough. It's just one of those aspects. While at the same time, it's like we got to be something for everybody. You can sleep with everybody. You can be evil. You can be good. You can be neutral. You can do the crazy chaotic stuff. You can blah blah blah. Like there's so much going on in that
Do you know
story.
what the Elder Scrolls world is like that? You know, where there's a lot
Is
going
it?
on, and yeah, and it does get crazy. But
Yeah, this was my player character. I put mods in the game very quickly. The character creator is really limited, so I gave my character
the Firekeeper from 3.
Yes, yeah, I wanted that Dark Souls mask. I thought that crown hiding the face was so cool. That's an image and a kind of idea for like that I've loved for like other character designs and stuff. I'm like, I can put this in my game. Great. I lost the plot with this character. She was this like paladin, and I had a particular goal for her with the story, but again, because so much was going on, I lost the plot of my own internal narrative for what I wanted the character to be, and it just turned into like I just lost it. That's when I gave up playing. So yeah, there's just so much going on in that game, and it's entertaining and it's fun. But man, again, I don't know. There's this obsession with the uh, having such a myriad of different fantasy species in one place and stuff without much thought or attempt to think about where they come from, their origins really bothers me. But maybe that's just because I'm a technical world building guy at heart.
Can every
I
type
know
of
you do have
character
to have like the lore behind it, because if you're playing with this world and you go, I really like this race of creatures and stuff. Let's look up about them. There's no history there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
can every type of character in that game basically do anything? Meaning, are you limited in any of your options capacities by either your sex, your race, your
No.
like no. Yeah.
No,
So
and that's also fifth
yeah.
edition's problem as a game module, and that's another module that contemporary D&D, this new module, which is technically sixth edition, has as well. They have eliminated, especially in this new D&D, they've eliminated species traits or race traits so that there is no imbalance, and that everything again, it's just a texture in these things. There is no limits as to what you can and cannot do depending on uh class. Okay, class, obviously abilities and stuff notwithstanding, but like it doesn't matter if I am a female drow or a tiny male gnome. I can solicit sex from the drow prostitutes in Baldur's Gate either way, and then I can also be
Yeah, so
absolutely reprehensible with like whatever common folk by the like the docks or whatever, or I can be really nice to them. You can do whatever. It's
yeah.
so
So
open in that way.
there's no basically what that means is there's no mapping whatsoever for the visual aesthetics to underlying mechanics or underlying reality of the game. So you could have the strongest possible warrior who's like, uh, let's say 80 centimeters tall and arms are thinner than mine,
Yes,
and
correct.
strongest possible warrior. Yeah.
Which actually, if you played 5th or 3.5 edition with people that I knew, like my old youth pastor used to play 3.5, he would get on to us about like the weight of the equipment we were carrying or like the size of our character. Be like, you can't jump. You have like all this equipment on you, right? He kept it grounded, but like there is none of that in this game.
Yeah. Oh, you're actually not smart enough to figure out that puzzle. Yeah, you're still stuck at that juncture. You
Yes.
have to use your but you are strong enough. You can brute force it. Yes.
Bear, you wanted to say something, I think?
Oh no, it was all right. I was just fixing this.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't quite fully figured out I have problems with Baldur's Gate as a thing, and I'm not quite sure how to articulate that in a way that's, I don't want to call it charitable, but properly represents that. But I think that's the start of some of the troubles.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible to have good gameplay. I haven't played Baldur's Gate yet, but like you could still have good gameplay, but then whatever character you play is simply aesthetic, So it's not truly a unique playing experience by choosing, because a lot of these older role-playing games, PC games that I played, like you would have a completely different gameplay experience if you And it's tough because sometimes it's based on what you start out as, and other times it's based on your choices throughout the game. And it's like Baldur's Gate 2. Baldur's Gate 2 is one of my favorite games I've ever played. It's
Okay.
amazing. So the story, it's a flat, it's 3D, but it's drawn in a 2D style and it's flat. You're not like it doesn't feel like you're in the world. It's almost like from a God's view, bird's eye view, I guess you could say. But if you play as, let's say, a chaotic evil mage, your gameplay as that compared to like a paladin, you can't actually be a paladin and be evil, or you get cast out of certain things. Like your gameplay has consequences such that you cannot stay affiliated or go down a bit. And also certain members of your party won't join you. Maybe that's still the case in Baldur's Gate 3.
There's a little bit, but you really have to push it for that stuff. You really have to ruin relationships and be heinous in certain ways and not heinous in other ways to do that. And you continue to be a paladin and you can get away with it because you just become an oathbreaker paladin. You break your oath and the spooky guy says, "You've broken the oath of your paladin order. You can choose either to renew it or you can be a part of my crew." And you're like, all right, it doesn't matter. I still have the same stat boosts and stuff. And so a lot of that is just a flavored consequence versus substantive consequence, I suppose.
Yeah, like there is a core storyline in Baldur's Gate 2 where you're trying to rescue your friend Imoen, and but in the act of trying to rescue her, like the real story is in how you earn the money needed to like get a trip to this place to rescue her. And so like how you earn that money is like very much up to you, and that's the real gameplay. Like you could speed run it probably through the whole game in like 5 hours or 10 hours, but you could spend 150 hours just exploring all the paths and the possibilities of this giant city called AKotSK.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's beautiful, and in terms of some of the stories and the voice acting, and yeah, I'm sure 3 has that, but like there's a texture over the whole city, like the drow are drow, and the vampires are vampires, and you have in 2 you have like the Thieves Guild, and you have this rising like zombie guild that's fighting it's hard to explain, but it's great. Yeah. You also have a serial killer that you have to solve, like who's doing the serial killing, and he's like skinning his victims alive, like leaving like flayed bodies out, and so you trace him back to the tanner, the guy who runs the who basically creates all the leather and stuff.
There's a couple of missions like that in Baldur's Gate 3. There's a lot of options for that. There's some of that. The main conceit of that game is that you are infected with one of those mind flayer parasites, and you will or maybe are to become a mind flayer. And so your main objective is to get that out of your brain so you don't get turned into one. It turns out you have a cosmic connection to like a rogue mind flayer, which has political conflicts with like 2 other different fantasy races in that world, blah, blah, blah. But then you have all the subplots with all of your main character friends, like the vampire guy, Asterion. He's got his own subplot. And the fire demon girl Tiefling has her own arc, and the human cleric lady has her own. And those are neat in their own respect, but there's almost too much going on. Again, there's that choice. Almost choice paralysis in the story, and I found myself getting kind of lost with all of it, or focusing on only one thing, perhaps a subplot, and no longer caring about or focusing on the main thing.
Yeah, because when you get overwhelmed with a lot of stuff in a short time, you begin to like quickly lose interest of the main meat and veg of it.
Mm-hmm. I hit. Good afternoon. Welcome to an actual live stream, sir. I know Scott here was here on my channel when I attempted to live stream Saturday night. That was a failure and a half on my end. I tried to stream Baldur's Gate 3 on here, and you cannot do split screen sharing and all this stuff without paying exorbitant prices for StreamYard. So.
Oh yeah, the annual package. Yeah.
That's so expensive. So I will promote this little duck in the corner if it means I don't have to pay for such things.
That's how they get you.
Yeah, you don't even get like any good bonuses. It's just you can have 2 extra people on and stream. That's it.
Yeah, and you know what? Like for what we do in this kind of corner of the internet, just a couple like screens, to be able to talk is enough, which
Yeah,
is all we do here. So, no need to be a gamer live streamer here.
we can just talk about the games.
Was beautifully imperfect. I really appreciate it. Maybe I should make that unlisted or public again, and people can watch the 25 minutes of troubleshooting. Maybe I'll dig it up. I'll dig it up. I'll dig it up. People can watch it. I have
The
nothing. I have no shame.
the struggle is real.
Nothing to hide from that the other night.
Oh no, make the troubleshooting video the intro to every stream.
That'd be hilarious. You just have to have 25 minutes of a random. I can't get Baldur's Gate in my Steam account set up to like
Yeah.
just playing it. That'd be pretty good. And then it's just like, oh, completely different people, new topic.
Yeah.
Pretty good. That'll be my new branding for the channel.
And if you need to step away to take a break, use that video again.
Oh, that'd be awesome. I love that. I think you're onto something, Bear. Let's see.
I'm gonna
Where do we
get
want
going because I gotta make lunch. But
Yes.
Oh, no worries, Chief.
Thanks for dropping by, Neil.
Good meeting you, Bear.
Oh,
Yes.
same to you, Neil. Oh, thank you.
Bye, Neil. That was pretty cool. Fun guest star. Let's see. Where else do I want to take this conversation? I've probably got another half hour. I should probably can be on here.
Oh, no worries.
Let's think. So we've
You
talked
see the
about
new
Bright
Fallout
Sword.
series?
If I've seen the new Fallout, no. I have friends who are very much into that franchise. Specifically, I think 3 or New Vegas, which I think is the norm. And they watch it. They rave about it, but then in other spaces, I've heard nothing particularly positive about it either. Have you seen it?
I have, yeah, and sadly, I am kind of from the other space of nothing positive to say.
Yeah. Okay. What's the biggest issue with it?
Without spoiling it, it's just what they do with like the established law and factions, and it's like because when you play the games, it's like these guys wouldn't do that; they wouldn't act this way.
Okay. That stinks. So it's just misrepresentation of that which has been established.
Yeah.
That seems to be one of the biggest concerns with so much of our franchises of the last 30 years when we see these remakes and we see these continuations, right? There is no regard for that which is
change too much or make these wild adaptations that don't fit it at all. And it's like, leave it alone.
Yeah, knock it off, please. This should have just stayed dead in some way.
Because they did it with Lord of the Rings, didn't he? With the Rings of Power. It's like
they did. I did not see that. I remember when that came out, and I remember my coworkers being extremely frustrated with that show and how laughably bad some of the production was and what it was doing. I also remember not being impressed with the Hobbit films either, though. So that was not quite the beginning of the end for them, but that had started with, that had started with that trilogy. Before Rings of Power. I remember when those were coming out. I'd just gotten into Lord of the Rings as an early adolescent, and I went to go see An Unexpected Journey on Christmas Eve as like a gift for that. And I remember liking the first 45 minutes and being bored by the rest.
Yeah, don't blame
you. Right as soon as Bilbo leaves the Shire, it's like, and click, I'm done.
Yeah.
That casting's brilliant, though. I will swear by Martin Freeman being like a great Bilbo, like every day. That's the highlight of those movies. Here's one about kind of taking a fantasy world and distorting it and doing some things that I'm not keen on. Do you remember Lord of the Rings? What was the? Oh no, I just lost the name of it. Those video games. They had 2 of them where you played as the Gondorian soldier who like dies and he's got like the elf ghost as
the
his
Bright
friend. And it was yes. And it was that like Assassin's Creed Batman Arkham Combat style. What was that called?
Yeah,
Shadow of Mordor.
Yeah, there was a Shadow of War. Yeah,
Shadow of War. Okay, and then they had Shadow of Mordor was the second one. That's right. I remember being bored by that game because I was really good at Arkham Combat and it was just super easy to just win in that. but also that game is so tonally, thematically against and opposed to everything else that Lord of the Rings is.
Yeah.
The harnessing of evil, the ring and some of these other powers for good, right? To transform and manipulate the orcs for your own thing. Like that was such a also very chaotic 2010s. This is what we do with our fantasy thing with the anti-hero.
Yeah.
See if I can pull up an image of that for reference. I bought it on sale a couple years ago, and I just got bored of it. I was like, this is not. The story is boring. It's kind of fun to run around and murder orcs, I guess, but again, in that world, in that realm, like that's not it.
No, and it
It's just not
becomes a grind
appropriate.
later on when you've got to like get higher level orcs, and it's like, oh, I don't really
That's
want to do it.
right. Oh yeah, you had the whole like the hierarchy and like power tree that you had to scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not a game that nobody remembers that, and I don't think anybody cares or remembers the second one, Shadow of War,
Mm.
at all,
Oh,
from what
don't
I
forget
understand.
the one that come out like I think last year or year before, the Gollum game.
The Gollum game. I remember that coming out. I never saw anything about it though. Gameplay wise, nobody I knew played it. I heard that was atrocious though.
Oh yeah, they just flopped.
Here we go. Here's a nice image of the. This was it. This was 2010's fantasy, everybody. This is what it was on one end of the spectrum. Let me see if I have another image that encapsulated in the other. Like you're either the cool lone wolf, dark broody guy, or you were the bard that wanted to sleep with the dragon in your D&D campaign. This was 2010's fantasy. There was no in between. Let me see if I can find an image of that Gollum game.
Mm.
They're trying for another movie, aren't they? They're looking to do the Aragorn Gandalf Hunt for Gollum story, right? That's
Really?
thing.
Oh,
From what yeah. Let me make sure. Before I'm saying things that are not true. Is it Hunt for God? Oh yeah, like Viggo Mortensen's gonna come back. Sir Ian McKellen somehow is gonna come back. 2027 next year.
Christopher Lee hologram.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll get a all AI CG rendered Council of Elrond, so it looks like attempting to look like it was 2001 again, so that they can do the media res. Like this was another part of the council we just didn't show, because that is where that story comes up. Andy Serkis is directing it, apparently, according to IMDb. Why is Elijah Wood listed in the cast?
I'd be doing a voice maybe.
Oh yeah, DH Elijah Wood again. Not that it takes a whole lot to DH him, but what else? Oh, and then they had Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim, that anime movie. Did you see that? I've never seen that.
Oh yeah. Oh what? Yeah.
What was that? How did that turn out?
I don't remember it being good.
Okay. Man. Yikes. Put that on the list. I feel like to do this this project, this exploration and writing, I have to just subject myself to a bunch of garbage from 10 years ago so I can better like articulate and describe it. And that's not a task I'm ready for. Here's another one. Anachronistic, very much contemporary fantasy storytelling. Castlevania on Netflix.
They actually did a good job with that, to be honest with you.
Yes, I think the first 2 seasons are good. I think everything after Dracula dies is not great. I
And then
really like
the French one they did where it was about the plantation, and it's like, no, vampires wouldn't do that.
I tried to watch, what was that one called? Nocturne. I tried to watch
Yeah.
Castlevania Nocturne. That was not good. That was not good. I didn't finish that. Yeah, I think those are another good representatives of some of these cultural problems and the way sensibilities found in these settings. And that even comes up with like one of the funnier scenes in the first season or two when was it Trevor Beaumont and Alucard first meet and they have to be friends with each other and they have that like
Oh yeah,
FUA
he
FUA hate
turns
you.
around and goes, eat this, and
Yes. There's a lot of that in that even still. Yeah, that like late Gen X millennial writing sensibility just is still, you can't escape it in this stuff.
Hmm.
And I not to blame the Gen X, the millennials per se, but I don't know where else it's coming from in the writing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's the cynical kind of edge and some of that which came out of it, which is different than the post meaning nonsense that like Gen Z has. Not that I'm exempt from that as a Gen Zer, but yeah. So yeah, where does that come from? Like the culture does so much to define the way we present historical fantastical worlds, I guess is the part of the thesis.
I just think it comes down to they want to insert themselves, project their thoughts and feelings onto this world they're working on, to the point where it just, if they have to completely nuke the story or the world to do so, they will do, with like no explanation or anything at all. It's just, hey, here's this like gay character,
Yes.
she's a Mary Sue.
Yes, and we don't have a particular regard for the implications of that in the world. And if we do, it's the very much like everybody can tolerate it. It's great, which I think you can do that. I think you can have the like the gay character, for example, just to use that in a fantastical world, but you got to play to the sensibilities historically, and how that would be treated.
Well, I mean, you can just have a gay character, just so long as they're written well, they're well
Mhm.
placed into the story. If you just shove them into the story just to go, oh, here's a gay person, it's
Yeah,
like, I, I don't care what the character does. I just want them to be good.
yeah. Joss Whedon's fingerprint, yes. Joss Whedon, I think, has a huge hand in the writing sensibilities we have for a lot of our fantastical superhero stories, right? He dominated the television world of the 2000s with Buffy and Angel. He went on to do, right, the first Avengers and Age of Ultron, Firefly. And all of his writing is very much that, like, oh, I don't know how to describe it, but it's a Whedonism. Like it's right there. It's what our sensibilities and our humor and stuff that we use so much still. Like we're still kind of living
Mm,
um in that kind of world. Like that was it's still apparently cool to do that. It's been so long. Which pivot?
mm.
The pivot from the Scott, the pivot from like living in a particular world and then co-opting the kind of contemporary sensibilities to that world, or like is it a different pivot you're talking about? I just want to make sure like I know what you're talking about to answer your question. What is Whedon's worldview? Um, I think from what I understand, Joss Whedon is pretty much that kind of, I don't want to clump him in with the new atheist, but he's very much probably that kind of new age, you know, not subjective morality, but everything kind of comes from humanity and not quite from anything outside, just downstream of a lot of our Western thought.
Mm,
Snark that is detached from characterization. That's the Whedonism. There we go. That's awesome. That's a good way to describe that, Af. Thank you.
mm.
Yeah, that's every Tony Starkism. It's the he's right behind me, isn't he? Kind of kind of joke that gets just as an example. Af said, I forget who said it, but someone asked, what's your favorite Buffy quote, followed by, do you remember who said it? That's true. That's good. Okay, good. So Bear spoke to it. Yeah, good. So that's been addressed. That pivot and that cultural shift, the imposition of particular philosophy and thought
Mm.
upon the fantastical world. Yeah, good. So we are hitting that. Uh, Man, yeah, the snark without detached from characterization, and that defines so much of it today, which is it's obnoxious to watch after a certain point. Especially
Mm.
the further I think removed you are from the time in which that snark is like socially acceptable or cool, like transposing that or some of that attitude doesn't work.
You can pull it off in like some degree if it's done well, because Resident Evil have like a lot of like, cheesy and snarky quotes, but they do
Yeah.
it well.
But I feel like Resident Evil knows what it is, and some of these other
Yeah,
stories that are trying to be, I'm not knocking Resident Evil when I say this, but like Resident Evil knows what it is, and it's not trying to be profound or super duper thought provoking in what it's doing. It's action
yeah,
horror, and it knows that, and it knows what its tropes it's pulling from, and so that can get away with it. But something like a Castlevania, like late seasoned Castlevania or something like a you know, any of these, you know, D&D downstream like 5th edition like fantasy stories like Vox Machina and stuff, it just doesn't work because all of them are snarky, all of them are clever and witty and LOL so random.
Hmm.
Scott says, I felt most entertainment was getting to the point of shoving worldviews into everything engaged with. Yeah, and I don't know if we're quite out of that yet. We've had it for probably 10 years now. It was really bad 7 years ago. And we're still kind of living in that. And I think it's receding in some respects. You can see that in small pockets, but you know, what was, if we want to call it like the woke culture of the time, really did do a number on story and work at the time, and we're still going to live in that for who knows how long.
Yeah, sorry, I've got like noise in the background, so I didn't want to play them while you were talking.
No, you're good. Appreciate it.
Tell you what, I'm gonna bounce off soon, but is there anything you want to ask me before I do?
Yeah, what let me see. What I kind of just want to like not quite super personal, but like what are you doing on YouTube? What brings you around to channels and spots like this, interest wise? You know, things you're super curious and looking into regularly. Like what you got? Just a little bit about yourself before you go, perhaps.
Oh yeah, no worries. To tell the truth, it's just I'll go on YouTube and find like open panels and stuff, and you know I'll join most, so I'm in a bit of a random ones most of the time. When I saw yours, it was like, oh, you talk about a good topic, so I'll jump in. But yeah, that's what I do. Just if I'm bored, I'll find panels and jump on.
Nice. I appreciate
No.
that.
No,
Seeing your
just
profile.
honestly, thank you for having me. It's been chill.
Yeah, I'm glad you hopped on. I've appreciated the profile picture as well. That's a really good expression to capture some of the attitude towards
Oh,
some of the storytelling. It's quite fitting there. I really appreciate it. So thanks for coming on and hanging out. This was really, really good.
no, thank you. Listen, you have a lovely day and take care of yourself, Chief.
Yes, take care. Hope to see you around.
Ta-ra, mate.
All right, that was awesome. Thank you, Bear, again for coming on. What up, Thugs with a Z? Hi, Ethan. It's good to see you doing my mid-afternoon live stream. I hope that the one person that knows I do YouTube is not at work right now checking that I'm doing this. I don't actually care. That's fine. If you're just dropping in, we just had a lovely conversation with Bear and Neil about some of the culture's issues when it comes to attempts at storytelling. Specifically within the medieval kind of fantasy genre and world. Don't know how much longer I'll be on unless Ethan or somebody or Scott, you want to bring something up, or Af wants to bring something up to kind of carry on the conversation. I was just hoping to, and I think I have talked out some of my reservations in even some small way of the entertainment downstream of Dungeons and Dragons cultural explosion and why I dislike so much of it now and did at the time. And so that's been really helpful this afternoon at work. Yep. All good. I'm normally not able to do this. So thank you, PTO, for this one. This mid-afternoon stream's pretty cool. That's that like chill out and do your work and listen to somebody ramble. It's kind of neat. I used to do that some of the other jobs I used to have. So being able to provide that today for whoever has been a really nice treat. Super cool stuff. Let me see if there's anything else on my back presentation of books I was looking at that is worth bringing up before we possibly close this out. Ah, you read the books? Okay. Well, what did you think of the books, Ethan? I've only read the first novella. I think I might spend some of my afternoon reading the second one, The Sworn Sword. I haven't started it yet. I also have the graphic novels. I got the first two. They smell weird. They're like new used books, and they smell awful, like they were in some weird box, like plasticky. It's gross. But the pencil works really pretty. I reached out to. There we go. So that's just a couple pages. I reached out to the artist who did the pencil work for this. I'd like to talk to him That'd be really cool, because that's just, now we're really just intersecting everything. Just talk about the comics industry and this book and this story. So we'll see what comes of that. That might be something in the future, God willing. Here's some other pages. I'm really impressed with this. The artist's name is last name's Miller. What's his first name? I don't have it offhand. Mike S. Miller did the pencils, and it feels very much like a refined 90s 2000 style. Like, this is what a lot of, I think, the independent like Image comic stuff wanted to look like in a lot of respects. I am quite on the adventure. I'm always trying to do the adventure in my own way. We'll see what happens with this one, this journey. So hopefully I get to talk to him. That'd be really neat. Some sort of randos style conversation. All of this again to kind of help build my thoughts on this world and this story. Still don't want to touch Game of Thrones though. So somebody's got to really sell me on those books for me to check that out, because I'm like, I don't really want to read about dragon politics that don't get unfinished, or that don't get finished. I mean, that are unfinished. Let's see. So I didn't ask, what did you think of the books, Ethan, the novellas, at least the first one, The Hedge Knight? Is there any like takeaways or anything that like stuck out with you with those with that story as much as it has with me? Because it does just feel like a return to form, very like storybook in some respects for me, that I just like, it's kind of comfy to read. Really enjoyed it. While we do that, I'm going to see if I can't pull some other maybe example of some of the story concerns. I like that they were finished. Yeah, it's nice to know that this one little volume that I have is all that I need to read, and I can stop there per se and be satisfied with it. Is there, I guess, I don't know if you know this question or answer to this one, Ethan, is there anything else in the Westeros world that's not a Song of Ice and Fire like Game of Thrones that Martin finished? Yeah, George is a talented writer. Those novellas prove it. He really does. He really does. There's some really sweet moments. I guess we talk about adaptation of this story, because I was discussing it with my roommate earlier. There's a lot of good that the adaptation does, but Martin leaves a lot of, there's certain narrative ambiguities to that novella that I really appreciate, specifically with the end. And I think I touched on it earlier in the live stream, that just get lost for the sake of TV drama for future seasons in the show and the adaptation. Like Egg's leaving the second time after Dunk has this conversation with his father about his being a squire. The book lets you decide whether or not his father kind of loosened up and took Dunk's words to heart with regards to allowing Egg to be in such humble means to become a squire versus staying in the castle, whereas it's very obvious by the last scene. I guess I'm just spoiling the series. And by the end of that scene, that show, it's revealed that he just snuck out again, and that there will be future conflict and tension with part of the House Targaryen. And so there's some of that hesitation that I know that, or worry that I think Bear expressed in some respect about where that's headed in future stories. Should probably start the Sworn Sword today. Maybe I really should just lock in, eat a quick snack, food or something, and see what that story has in store. I think that also the thematically what, or maybe on the like the undercurrent, some of what both stories are doing is a little bit different with character relationships. So the Trial of Seven and the novella, all the knights are brought together by Egg and some others, and not by some of the relationships and connections that Dunk has formed. And so perhaps that's more a focus and emphasis on the upholding and preservation of what is right for its own sake, versus some of the relationships that Dunk forges throughout that season, and it's kind of slow burn, do pay off. As, for example, like Baratheon, he and Dunk have a friendship that does ultimately produce his coming to his defense. And that is in the series, in the TV show, makes that connection. Like, is this partly just because that they are friends and he has proved his worth, versus merely this preservation of the innocent that is Dunk in this trial. So I think there's two different things going on there thematically, for example. Sir Arlen's characterization is fleshed out a lot more in the television show as well. And I don't know, I think they're very different characters in the TV show. I don't mean to spoil all this for you, Ethan. But Sir Arlen in the text is far more vague, but what is remembered by Dunk about him proves him to be a very honorable, noble man, and a great man. And then what's presented in the TV show leaves a little bit to desired, seemingly. In some respects, it looks like and feels like Dunk's palling around with this washed-up knight who really didn't get very far. Like, what you actually see of what he does is not particularly impressive, and it's quite all of the ills of him. You'll see what I mean when you get to some of what is presented in the framing. There's one really big, like, yes, this is why he follows in moment, but throughout a lot of that, you're like, why did he join Sir Arlen? Up until that point, there's a lot of very not flattering things we see about that character. For, again, these kind of comedic sensibilities of modern audiences. Again, that anachronism. Again, that we find this funny today. Let's put it in the past so you can laugh. No, I didn't laugh. It was weird, kind of gross. Let's see. Any other thoughts from the comment section? We'll probably land the plane at this point. There's some other tasks that I need to take care of today. So, going once, going twice. Hour and a half, really good impromptu stream. That was a lot of fun. That was a really nice way to spend a little bit of my time today. So yeah, I'll probably wrap it up, play my branding really fast, and close this out. So thank you guys for coming in and jumping on to the live stream or into the comments or just listening from wherever you are today. Again, hope you guys got something out of it. I thought this was kind of helpful, and we'll probably return to listen to some of this to help formulate some of my ideas for what I'm trying to write. Much more coherent. Yes, much more coherent than trying to play BG3 and Baldur's Gate at the same time. I'll play Baldur's Gate again, but I will not try to have some sort of interesting thing to say if we do that again. Thank you, Af. I'm glad that this was more coherent. All right, everybody. Have a good rest of your afternoon in midweek. Cheers. So long.